The Super Bowl odds are out, and I'm not talking about the Super Bowl that's coming in about a week from now. We're talking about the Super Bowl that will come in February 2026. And yes, we're already talking about that because why not? The Ravens aren't in the Super Bowl right now. So might as well start the conversation, especially since ESPN Bet came out with the odds. At the top of the list, as you can see here on the graphic, the Chiefs, Ravens, and Bills are all essentially tied for their Super Bowl odds. Chiefs are in the top spots. The Chiefs at a plus 600, Ravens and Bills both at plus 650. Then the Lions, Eagles, Bengals, and 49ers. Eventually, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have to lose at some point, right? Like, they just can't keep winning nonstop, right? The question is posed, which quarterback has the best chance to dethrone Patrick Mahomes in the AFC in 2025? I will bring in the audio in just a second, but the four panelists that you will hear from is Mike Tannenbaum, Dan Graziano, Bart Scott, and then Mike Greenberg himself. So here is how that conversation went down on Get Up.
One of these days, Patrick Mahomes is not going to win the championship, right? He's not just going to win it every single year. So we put the question up to all of our guys. Who will be the one who wins the first Super Bowl that isn't won by Patrick Mahomes? And I see Graziano, you're taking Josh Allen.
I am, because I feel like they've shown, the Buffalo Bills, they're talking about stay the course, one of these years it'll work out for us. They believe that, but they're also not afraid to get aggressive to improve their team, right? We've seen them trade a first-round pick for Stephon Diggs, right? We've seen them stretch for Von Miller in free agency. Obviously, that didn't work out as well. So you know that the Bills have a sound structure that gets them back there every year, and you also know that they're not afraid of trying to make that move to get them over the top.
Mike T, why do you go Lamar?
Because outside of Derrick Henry, this group is extremely young, including Zach Orr, their first-year defense coordinator. I think the coaching staff's going to get better, and I think when you think about Zay Flowers amongst others, just give this team a little bit more time together. And if they had played Kansas City 10 times this year, Green, it's probably a 50-50 split. I think Kansas City is getting older. I think Baltimore is getting better.
Bart? And for that same point, when you talk about Graz, that the Buffalo Bills are willing to take the big swings, the Baltimore Ravens are more about drafting and development, which gives you a longer longevity with your window. So I think the window is just beginning to open as the Ravens have kind of shifted to a offensive type of organization.
I'm going to make one other point here. I feel like the Bills have given their best shot every time and just gotten beat. I feel like the Ravens beat themselves every single year.
And that's another reason to take the Bills.
Well, no, I feel like maybe one of these days the Ravens figure it out. Like the Bills just, I think they've been beaten because the Chiefs have just been this much better than them.
Yeah, but the ball bounces funny, and sometimes maybe one of these years the Bills will be this much better. I think they're in a good spot. The Ravens are a solid pick.
Joe, what do you think?
Somebody from Buffalo needs to make a play. The greatness of Mahomes is that he's got other guys that make a play. Third down in overtime last year, it was Chris Jones who pressured Purdy, threw it away. It led to the field goal. No one makes the play for Buffalo. They missed the field goal last year. Kincaid can't catch the ball this year. You go back 3 years ago, the problem with the 15 seconds left, special teams, defense. Someone just needs to step up. Now to your question, Greeny, NFC, San Francisco 16-1, positive injury regression. Everyone's checked out on him because of how bad it looked this year. That's the price.
Joe, what about Mark Andrews if he makes the play on the two other plays?
That's the Ravens consistently shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
The Ravens will find a way to lose, but that's an excellent point as well. Like
The turnovers. Buffalo had no turnovers, still lost.
Ooh, a lot of good points being made there. And basically everybody there was saying it was the Ravens who they feel like had the best chance to dethrone Patrick Mahomes, except for Dan Graziano. So Dan obviously pointing to the fact that, well, the Bills will make a move to put him over the top. They're not afraid to do that. The counter to that from Bart Scott was like, wait a minute, that's true, but the Ravens window will always be open longer because they can develop people. It's not like just here's our one shot, it's do or die, and then we'll move on. Greeny had probably the best point to me. And he's saying when you watch the Buffalo Bills play against the Chiefs are just better, right? The Bills can't point to hey, we had all these turnovers and we shot ourselves in the foot. Okay, the Bills say, you watch the Bills and it's like, you gave them the best shot. Now, you did beat them in the regular season, but you're now 0-4 against Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. Now, maybe if the Bills do what Graziano said and they go out and they just get that one guy that puts them over the top, maybe they can do that. But as currently constructed, it's the Chiefs are just beating the Bills. No turnovers. There should have been turnovers. There were 4 fumbles by the Bills plus 2 near interceptions, but sometimes luck plays into all of this. And luck was on the Bills' side, and despite all that luck, the ball bouncing their own way, they couldn't get over the hump. And people might want to point to that Kincaid play. I get it, but that was no Mark Andrews catch. The level of difficulty was a massive, massive gap. You could run the Nile River right down that, okay? Mississippi River, whatever you want to say. There was a gap between the degree of difficulty between those two catches. And I agree with Greeny. It just doesn't look like the Bills can beat them in the postseason. Meanwhile, with the Ravens, you just don't know because they keep shooting themselves in the foot. Catch the ball, Mark Andrews. Don't turn the ball over. No fumbling, no bad interceptions. In other games, it was penalties. You're not getting beat outright. So Dan says, well, that's a reason to keep going against the Ravens. And Greenberg and the rest of the crew are like, no, they're going to figure this out. They're going to figure this out. And you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. Obviously, both last year and this year, the way the Ravens got knocked out was devastating. And there were some that were just depressed after both. And there were some that had to have a social media fast and not consume anything. So for sure, both. But just talking from a person who's been, has had to continue on Twitter and on YouTube and the podcast world, to me, it feels like there's more hope of returning this year than there was last year. Now, you can speak for yourself. I'm talking about the listeners that I've interacted with. Depression both times, believe me. But it seems like there's more hope this time, more based off of how the Ravens lost with shooting themselves in the foot rather than just getting outcoached last season. Meanwhile, yesterday, I made a note on Twitter about Lamar Jackson. We know that Lamar has decided not to go to the Pro Bowl, despite it being just a couple hours down the road from where he resides in Florida. And he's mostly been silent on social media. He hasn't done any interviews. He just wants to go and be by himself, which is fair. But the times that he has posted on social media is he's been retweeting messages of faith and strength. So he retweeted this picture to the left that had him quoted saying, "I love you, Jesus." And he retweeted that. And prior to retweeting that, he had retweeted another Bible verse from Lamentations 3:28 through 30, which read, "When life is heavy and hard to take, go off by yourself." Pretty much exactly what he's been doing. Go off by yourself. Enter the silence. Bow in prayer. Don't ask questions. Wait for hope to appear. Don't run from trouble. Take it full face. The worst is never the worst. That's the end of that scripture. I just find it interesting. He posts something like that, which is exactly what he's been doing. Go off by yourself. Don't run from trouble. I always say it all the time, right? Look ugly in the eye. Look it in the eye. Some people just I don't even want to see it. Thus the social media fasts that people are like yesterday I had 3 super chats for okay, I'm finally returning today, which, that's certainly one valid way to go about it. The worst is never the worst. I mean, it's been nonstop. Look at all of these. If God leaves the room, I'm leaving with God. You have to wait on God. The Bible is the cheat code to life. Pray until there is no fear left in you. I need Jesus every day. So listen, a lot of people, or a few people yesterday was like, why do you have to cover this? I don't want to hear about faith. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But to me, if it was anything but faith and somebody else was posting messages of overcoming adversity, if it weren't faith, everybody would be talking about it with Lamar. Okay, but a lot of the media just avoids this topic, which is fine. That's their prerogative. I don't, because I think it's what is the foundation for the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. This is his foundation. This is his way of working through a very disappointing loss. And if others were talking about how they were doing it in a non-faithful way, it would be covered, in my opinion. So I want to cover who Lamar Jackson is. And he's tweeted before how he doesn't like it when people don't acknowledge that. He's like, oh, if I tweet this, you guys are retweeting and talking about it all day. But if it's about faith, you don't do it. So I'm not going to be that person. We do personality profiles of players all the time. This is who Lamar Jackson is. And obviously, I agree with him. Like, you guys hear me say this type of stuff all the time. I always say, don't baby the Baltimore Ravens quarterback the way you baby other quarterbacks. We had this conversation last week. Like, I feel sorry for Josh, they say. With Lamar, it's just the question of, how much of it is his fault that the Ravens lose? And I say, fine, I don't need your pity. I don't need your excuses. You can do what you want. Lamar doesn't need it either. He turns to God, and he finds strength in saying, don't run from trouble. Take it face on. The worst is never the worst. Enter the silence and find the strength within yourself through your faith and through your own efforts combined. So I just think it's interesting that he's been retweeting these things nonstop, and nobody wants to talk about it. But I think it is Lamar's way of restarting the process of trying to come back and become a Super Bowl winner.